Sir Keir Starmer is no longer simply losing control of the political conversation, he is losing control of the country's mood. This week, across Britain, thousands of ordinary, working-class citizens took to the streets, not in a gesture of political theatre, but in a raw and urgent display of collective frustration. The people have spoken, not through think tanks or party conferences, but by standing shoulder to shoulder in towns and cities from Doncaster to Dover, and Westminster could no longer pretend not to hear. And Starmer? He was nowhere to be seen. No public appearance. No meaningful statement. No reassurance offered. No solidarity shown. Just a void. A silence so deafening that it could only be interpreted as fear. The fear of a man whose carefully crafted image is beginning to crack. The fear of a party whose shiny promises are being met by grim, uncompromising reality. And above all, the fear of a ruling class that is being confronted by a public no longer content to remain quiet. For the first time since Labour regained power, the facade has slipped. The well-polished, managerial mask that Starmer has worn for years is beginning to peel away, revealing the hollow technocracy underneath. The so-called man of the people now stands exposed as the lead figure in an elite-driven project that seems more committed to appeasing lobbyists, foreign interests, and international NGOs than to serving the people who elected him. The Britain he represents is not the Britain of builders and bakers, of nurses and lorry drivers, but a version of the country imagined in policy briefings, diversity audits, and Davos panels. The recent public unrest was not fueled by radical ideologies or fringe movements. It wasn't orchestrated in think tanks or funded by shadowy donors. It was the authentic voice of real Britain, plumbers, carers, teachers, retired servicemen, shopkeepers, young apprentices, and elderly pensioners, people from every walk of life who have given their working years, paid their taxes, raised their families, and obeyed the rules. These people are now uniting to say, clearly and forcefully, we've had enough. And what are they asking for? Not revolution, but restoration, a return to common sense, decency, and balance. They are demanding a full stop to illegal immigration, not because they are bigots, but because they believe in law and order. They are calling for an end to the ideological extremism of net zero policies that threaten to destroy British farming and industry. They are demanding justice for victims of grooming gangs who have been ignored, dismissed, or silenced for decades. They want an inquiry, a real one. They seek protection for our farmers, support for our fishermen, free speech in our universities and town halls, and, above all, a justice system that does not discriminate by class, colour, or creed. These are not unreasonable demands. They are rational, moral, and long overdue. But in the eyes of Labour's political elite, they are dismissed as dangerous. Such views are labelled populist, divisive, or right-wing. In truth, they are simply British. And this is the tragedy of our times, that the political establishment, Labour included, no longer recognises the will of the people when it doesn't suit their agenda. They sneer at dissent, censor inconvenient truths, and hide behind the protective curtain of a media class that treats ordinary citizens as if they were an embarrassment to modern Britain. This movement we are witnessing is not fringe. It is mainstream, or rather, it is becoming the new mainstream. It is the voice of a nation finally breaking through the noise of political platitudes and broadcast indifference. You didn't see this coverage on the BBC. You didn't hear about it in the headlines of The Guardian or during a cosy panel on Sky News. Why? Because they are afraid, not of violence, not of chaos, but of clarity. Clarity about what the people of Britain really think. Clarity about the depth of their disillusionment. Clarity about the growing rejection of the status quo. The British people are no longer asleep. The awakening is here. And they are not politely requesting reform, they are insisting upon it. For too long, Keir Starmer has played a role, the clean-cut lawyer with impeccable credentials, the competent alternative to Tory chaos. He promised to clean up politics. Promised to represent ordinary Britons. Promised to be different. But every promise has since evaporated. This Labour government, still within its first year, has already abandoned its key pledges. From scrapping meaningful planning reform to backpedaling on free speech protections, from failing to support farmers to fudging pension commitments, they have chosen cowardice over courage, incompetence over conviction. The result is a population that is not just disillusioned, but angry. Righteously, justifiably angry. As one Reform UK councillor recently declared, this isn't just about Labour. This is about the entire establishment. And they are right. For decades, we have endured the illusion of choice, blue team or red team, Tories or Labour. Different names, same outcomes. Mass immigration. Crippling taxes. Cultural vandalism. Rural neglect. Declining public services. The people were promised a new era, what they received was more of the same. Now, with support for Reform UK surging in the polls, particularly in Labour's traditional working-class heartlands, Starmer is nowhere to be found. He has disappeared from public view, unwilling or unable to face the electorate. His silence is not strategic, it is cowardly. He knows what's coming. He has seen the shifting mood. He heard it in the chants in Dover. Saw it in the thousands marching in Doncaster. He knows that this is not politics as usual. This is a reckoning. Reform UK is no longer a protest vote. It is a political uprising. As one caller put it on GB News, I haven't voted in years. But Reform is the first party in decades that makes me feel like someone is listening. And therein lies the danger for Labour, a party that thought it could drift to power on the back of Conservative collapse. But the tide is no longer red. It's turquoise. Reform's support isn't born in Westminster boardrooms or managed by spin doctors. It's rising from local pubs, industrial estates, community halls, and high streets. The momentum is building among those who have felt ignored and patronised for too long. Starmer's answer to this? To float Angela Rayner as his possible successor, a move as cynical as it is ineffective. Swapping one out-of-touch politician for another, hoping a regional accent will be enough to appease a furious public. But let's be clear, authenticity isn't in the vowels. It's in the values. And Rayner, for all her working-class credentials, offers nothing new, just more tax, more bureaucracy, and more green dogma. She's Starmer in steel-capped boots. Labour isn't listening. And Reform is the only party saying what millions are already whispering, that Britain is broken, that the elite no longer care, and that unless we stand up now, we may never get another chance. Starmer should have faced the people. He should have taken the questions. Instead, he ran. And in doing so, he proved every accusation correct. He left the media to mop up the mess, left the pundits to make excuses. But the public saw through it. They know that when politicians hide, it means only one thing, they are scared. Scared of scrutiny. Scared of broken promises. Scared that the days of their cosy consensus are finally drawing to an end. Because Reform UK is not just a party. It is the consequence of decades of betrayal. The establishment laughed at it, mocked Nigel Farage, dismissed Reform voters as cranks and gammon. But they are not laughing now, not when Labour councillors are losing their seats. Not when Reform is polling neck and neck in places that once wore red rosettes without question. Not when lifelong Labour supporters are walking away in disgust. And if you think this uprising is over, think again. This is only the beginning. More protests are planned. More rallies will come. The momentum is growing. If Keir Starmer continues to hide behind PR stunts and Oxbridge advisors, he won't just lose control, he'll be swept away by a tidal wave of public anger. The people have spoken. And if Labour doesn't listen now, it may never recover. In a political climate where silence often speaks louder than words, it was Nigel Farage, not Sir Keir Starmer, not Rishi Sunak, who dared to step forward and speak for a forgotten nation. As the Labour government tightens its grip on power, stifling protest and silencing dissent, it is Farage who has once again captured the national mood. This past week marked a pivotal moment, a surge of grassroots defiance now widely referred to as the Great British Uprising. From Doncaster to Dover, Wrexham to Woking, the streets of Britain echoed with chants not of extremism, but of earnest desperation. Ordinary, working-class Britons, builders, nurses, ex-servicemen, shopkeepers, young families, pensioners, marched together not in anger, but in purpose, demanding their country back from the distant elite that now governs from behind closed doors. And what did Sir Keir Starmer, Labour's self-styled man of reason, do in response? Did he come out to listen? Did he open dialogue? Did he even acknowledge the voices echoing across Britain's towns and high streets? No. He sent in the police. Riot vans rolled in. Sirens wailed. Batons were readied. Protesters, peaceful and unarmed, were treated as if they were enemies of the state. Labour, the party that once claimed to champion the working class, turned on them with chilling indifference. But just as it appeared that the protests might be crushed beneath the heel of state force, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Nigel Farage, a political figure long dismissed by the establishment, stepped forward not with fanfare, but with resolve. He strode into the fray, not flanked by aides or surrounded by cameras, but alone, standing between the police and the very citizens Labour had betrayed. He didn't hesitate. He didn't equivocate. And the crowd? They didn't see a politician, they saw a leader. This was no far-right rally. This wasn't the fantasy of fringe conspiracy theorists. This was the real Britain, men and women who work shifts, raise families, pay their taxes, and obey the law. They have seen their communities transformed by uncontrolled illegal immigration. They have watched as housing lists grow longer, public services crumble, and the politicians promise everything while delivering nothing. They've endured green policies crafted by ministers who wouldn't know a ploughshare from a pothole. And they've suffered in silence, until now. The Labour Party promised them a new dawn. Instead, it has delivered surveillance, censorship, and state intimidation. Sir Keir Starmer speaks of moderation while governing with the heavy hand of managerial authoritarianism. Labour claims to support free expression, yet it is now Labour ministers who threaten those who speak too freely. Labour promises justice, yet turns a blind eye to the grooming gang scandals and the erosion of due process. There are now, as so many Britons see, two tiers of justice, one for the favoured, another for everyone else. But you won't hear this on the BBC. Sky News twists it. The Guardian ignores it entirely, too busy penning soft focus profiles of Starmer's so-called moderate revolution to notice the cracks spreading beneath its feet. Here lies the dirty secret: Sir Keir Starmer is no moderate. The current Labour administration is not some benign technocratic force. It is something worse, a condescending, Oxbridge-educated, media-insulated elite, utterly divorced from the values and struggles of ordinary people. They expect the taxpayer to work, pay, and shut up. But that era, it seems, is ending. This was supposed to be Starmer's honeymoon. Barely a year into his premiership, and the shine has worn off. His manifesto lies in tatters. U-turns have become policy. The public, once cautiously hopeful, now feel duped. Labour supporters are drifting away. The disillusioned majority is stirring. And while Starmer clings to his media training and his memo-writing advisors, Farage is taking action. He saw the officers approaching with cuffs. He stood in their path. He called out the hypocrisy and invoked the law, and more importantly, the moral force of a people who have simply had enough. The officers stepped back. Because Farage wasn't just standing in front of protesters, he was standing in front of history. And history, as it now appears, is not being written by Labour insiders or BBC commentators, but by ordinary Britons who are rediscovering their voice. And where, one might ask, is Angela Rayner in all this? Labour's deputy leader, the self-appointed working-class crusader, seems more intent on fueling class conflict than providing competent leadership. Her recently leaked internal memo reads less like a programme for national renewal and more like a manifesto for bureaucratic overreach, packed with tax hikes, land grabs, and immigration concessions, all cloaked in the familiar language of social justice. Let's not be fooled. A Mancunian accent does not authenticity make. Policies speak louder than vowels, and Rayner's policies are as out of touch as the rest of the Labour front bench. The truth is both Starmer and Rayner are playing roles in the same charade. One feigns moderation, the other radicalism. But behind the curtain, both are part of the same tired establishment, one that seeks to divide the public, discredit dissent, and diminish the democratic spirit of the people. But it isn't working anymore. The silent majority has found its voice again. This wasn't just a protest, it was a movement. And Farage didn't just show up. He lit the fuse. The establishment wanted docility. What they got was defiance. Starmer wanted quiet obedience. What he got was resistance. And if this government dares to tighten the screws further, to criminalize protest, to muzzle dissent, they'll find the people more ready than ever to fight back.